Hello friends, Kim Schofield here with another video on my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to be making two cards using an emboss resist coloring technique using Distress Oxide inks. And I am going to be using some sweetened Sassy stamps for this. This is the Scribble Flower stamp set. And so to get started, I have stamped a bunch of flowers from the stamp set onto a piece of white cardstock. This is a mixed media cardstock. Oh, no, I take it back. This is actually a watercolor cardstock. That's right. I started with watercolor because I thought that's what I was going to do initially, but I changed my mind. And these are stamped with Versamark ink, and I am simply covering them with white embossing powder. So this is the Ranger watercolor paper, and I'm actually using the smooth side. There's a textured side and the smooth side, and so to get a good clean image, you want to stamp on the smooth side. But what I ended up doing, you could really use with any kind of cardstock. It does not have to be the watercolor cardstock. That just happens to be what I used. But you could use any kind of regular cardstock, or you could use a mixed media paper as well. And then I'm just using my heat gun, and I'm going to heat up all these images. They'll be a little challenging to see. You can kind of see them in the light a little bit, but I'm embossing white on white, so you're not going to be able to really see those very well. And this is great to do this technique using watercolors, which was originally what I was thinking, but being that I'm usually pressed for time, I opted to go for a really quick coloring technique using blending tools and oxide inks. And you could do this technique also with any kind of dye inks that you have. So I have a couple of oxide inks here. You can see I've put a little green on one of the leaves, and I have my little blending tools. And these are pretty much the three colors that I used for all of my flowers. So I'm using the yellow, and I'm just putting a little bit of that down in the center of my flower. And then I'm going to use a dry cloth to remove any ink that's sitting on top of the embossing powder. So because the embossing powder is going to resist the ink, you'll be able to see those lines pop out. But I just want to make sure, since Distress ink, the oxide inks stay wet a little bit longer, I want to make sure I use that cloth when I'm finished coloring in my flowers to remove any of that ink that's sitting on the top, because I don't want to get my fingers in that and end up smudging that anywhere else. And that'll make those white lines really pop out. Now at this point, you could even spritz this with water and get a little bit of a watercolor look, but I just left it as is. And then I cut all of my images out, and I have a whole bunch of these flowers cut out and ready to go. Aren't those colors vibrant? Those oxide inks, I love them. So for my card base, I'm actually using a wood grain cardstock from Tim Holtz. And I wanted to add, this is a piece of regular cardstock, and I actually want the edges of this to be silver. So I'm using some embossing ink, and I'm adding some silver embossing powder all around the edges. Doesn't matter what the middle of that looks like, because you won't be able to see that. And if I had silver paper, I could have done that. I just die cut two circles with some nesting dies. These are two ovals rather, not circles. And I don't have any silver paper though. So embossing powder to the rescue. Plus I really like that you get that kind of metallic shine that embossing powder gives you. So it's really nice technique. So one layer of embossing powder, you'll have some nice texture. Not too bad, but it's not super smooth. And I kind of wanted it to look like it was very smooth, almost this mirror type finish. So I'm adding another layer. And I'm using a coffee filter to hold all of my extra embossing powder, which is a great tool to use. I love it. And I'm going to go ahead and melt that again. You can see how much more it smooths out. I actually ended up doing 3 layers of Versamark ink and embossing powder on top of this. So you really get a fantastic finish, really smooth and shiny. Look at that. Isn't that cool? So now I'm just going to go ahead and layer one oval on top of the other. And then this is where you'll see that little bit of silver paper now peeking out on the edges. And then I'm going to use some foam tape so I can pop this section up. And this wood grain cardstock I love. I've had it for ages. I think it came out a while ago. And I don't think I've ever used it yet. And I just love that little bit of texture that it added to the card, which you'll be able to see better in the photos. So just using some foam tape there, popping that up so I have a little bit of dimension, and putting that onto the center of my card. And then now I can decide where I want my flowers to go. So just arranging those where I want them to go. And voila, I added them along with the sentiment that was embossed in white embossing powder on a piece of black cardstock. And I just attached my flowers with my tape runner, and then I attached a few of them with foam tape. So really simple. Decide where you want them to go and just kind of put those along the oval shape there, the frame. And this is just a top folding card that I am attaching this onto. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some Nuvo drops onto a few spots here. So I use some sequins basically just to decide where did I want my Nuvo drops to go. And I love this trick because you kind of get a visual before you start actually putting anything down onto your paper. And I'm using 3 different sizes of drops, kind of making some little tiny drops and medium size and large drops. I just got Nuvo drops, oh gosh, maybe a month or 2 ago. Love them, very fun. So these will dry with some nice dimension. And so this card is pretty much finished. And now let's go on to the second card using the leftovers. So this is my piece of paper where I die cut that oval. And then I have a few flowers left over. So I am just tracing the oval with my pencil, and then I kind of erased some just so I could knock back that line so nothing got trapped under my ink. But this gave me enough of a line so I could see where everything was located, where that circle was located, because I'm going to add some color now. And I am using, again, my same colors of Distress Oxide ink. I think this is Fossilized Amber and Spice Marmalade that I'm using. And I'm just applying that ink with a circular motion using the round blending tool. And I kind of want this to look a little bit like a sunset. So we'll add that orange to the top, blend that down into the yellow. And one of the things I love about Oxide inks is the way that they blend together beautifully. And so you can just go back and forth over this, making sure your blending is good, making sure everything is well covered there, that nothing's going to, that the whole background area is covered within my oval cutout. So just adding ink until I get that to look the way I like. And then now I'm going to go ahead and add my sentiment. This is from another Sweet and Sassy stamp set. And I'm just deciding here, I am going to use my Mini Misty for this because I want to, I have that cutout window there, and then where I'm going to have the flowers. And so I'm really trying to determine where exactly that sentiment is going to go. Of course, nothing like knocking your paper out of place. And then I will use the magnets to hold the background piece on, the one that we did the Distress ink, and then I'll remove the little die cut window. And go ahead and pick up my stamp. And I am using some VersaFine ink, and this is where I noticed that just based on the grid lines there that I was slightly, excuse my head, not quite even, just needed to scoot it a teeny little bit. Sometimes I think I actually do better eyeballing things versus trying to line it up with a ruler. So go ahead and ink up my stamp and stamp that down. And now that'll be right inside the window. So now I decided to make a shaker card, and all I've done is put some foam. Well, first I put down some adhesive, then a plastic window, then some foam tape all around, and now I'm just filling my window with some sequins. And these are just, I think I have maybe a 5mm and 8mm that are in there, 2 different sizes. I think they're pretty generic brand that I picked up at my local craft craft store. And I'm just using my embossing buddy to go along the inside edge of that tape, just so my sequins don't get stuck in there. And then I'll go ahead and add some more tape around the back before I put my card base on. And I didn't completely fill this area with foam tape, but I kind of wish I did, or that I maybe used some craft foam, just because the shaker cards are really popped up. So it's nice to have that whole area filled in the back behind the window there. And so now there's my shaker. I love shaker cards. Aren't they so much fun? And now I went ahead and I'm going to attach my flowers. And one of them I'll put flat, just using my tape runner. And then the other one I'll pop up with a little bit of foam tape, which gives me some nice dimension. And now I have two matte mini butterflies from Wendy Vecchi, and I'll just use my Oxide inks again to go ahead and color those up. This is worn lipstick. And I thought I was going to add a little bit of the purple on the edge of the butterflies, but then afterwards I thought, nope, I just like them pink. So I went back and just added a little bit of pink and covered right up. You couldn't even tell that I ever had any purple on there. And then I'll go ahead and place those down using a little bit of Ranger Multimatte. And then we got to have a little bit of Wink of Stella. So I have a little bit of Wink of Stella on there for a little shimmer. And last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and use my Nuvo drops again. And these are silver Nuvo drops. So I'll go ahead and add those. And again, using those sequins as a placeholder. Then I got a little crazy. I did more than where I had my sequence. I thought, oh, another dot here. And I need a dot here. And you know, once you start with the Nuvo drops, it's hard to control yourself. But I put some at the bottom, on the bottom there under the flowers, and I thought, well, now it doesn't seem even. Now I need some up in the top. That's why the sequins are a good thing to use. But this just about finishes up both of my cards for today. I hope you enjoyed this fun and quick way to color some images using embossing powder and Distress Oxide inks. Thanks so much. Happy crafting.